Thank you very much, Richard, for your words, appreciative words. Now, you mentioned there the question of the confluence of perspective, the objective and the subjective. They're coming together in both. And I suppose the objective for me would be sort of what actually your work achieves outside of you, and subjectively it's what it achieves for you. But of course, when you understand anthropology in terms of shared subjectivity between different people, well, then the two kind of come together, because what I obtain for myself, I also obtain it for other people. Very convinced of the importance of Genesis chapter 1, of course, and it's there. But it is interesting that throughout history, the fathers of the church, Thomas Aquinas, the whole lot of them, they didn't see a theology of work in Genesis chapter 1. I mean, it just wasn't there. I mean, I think the ones who really insisted on it from the beginning were Calvin and Luther. No? It's mentioned, there are a few things in Origin, it's mentioned here and there, because it was basically taken that work is something that you shouldn't really be doing. I mean, Thomas Aquinas, he said that Jesus's mission began not with his hidden life in Nazareth working, etc., but in the moment of his baptism. That's when his mission and his saving work began, in the moment of baptism. Another idea that came up and was mentioned there briefly, and I think it is very interesting, which is the phrase John 5:17, my Father is working still and I'm working. And as Christians, I'm working as well. In other words, the God that we adore, and to whom we owe our existence and our lives, is a working God. God is an active God. It's a life-giving God. And we as Christians, following in the line of what Christ did, we act in the same way. We're a continuation, or we're a participation in the working life of our Lord. Now, here's the problem I'd like to come to in the area of the Protestant understanding of anthropology and the life of grace, which is the idea, Luther at least, that God's work is not dependent on human efforts. God's work is not dependent on human efforts. In other words, God saves us. We're justified by grace, through faith. And then, apart from that, we receive our calling, beruf, no? And then we start working and we do the different things that we're supposed to do. But do these things combine? Do these areas combine? Whereas Catholic theology has the idea that the fruit of grace in Christian life isn't only that of the forgiveness of sin, the justification of the sinner. It is actually the sanctification and the regeneration and the divinization of the human heart. It's an actual changing. But of course, it's the human heart and it's human action. So you might say that sanctification which comes from the Lord is, through me, is a transformation of the world by means of my work. So if you wish that it's a subjective issue, but it's not just a personal subjective issue. In other words, it's not just a shared subjectivity, sharing my subjectivity with other people. It's sharing my subjectivity with God's subjectivity as well. In other words, as I work with God and for God and towards God and for the glory of God, as Calvin insists on a lot, and I work towards and with and for other people. So I think there's an issue there to try to understand in a sort of a more wholesome way what you might say properly lived Christian work would look like, without falling into what you mentioned there, pietistic dualism, that particular issue.